Okay, so we have reached a decision. In the audience poll, I will end that. We have 27 to 11 in favor of the affirmation. And among the judges, we have 2 to 1 in favor of the affirmation. So I will give the judges a chance to elaborate. I will start with Marna, if you will.
Thank you very much, Holly, and I appreciate it. This is unusual for me in policy debate. Usually the judge that's in the minority gets to go first and kind of state their case. I've seldom voted in the majority and then been able to kind of like the Supreme Court give the majority decision, but I'm happy to participate. And I'd like to congratulate everybody for an excellent debate tonight. On the affirmative, Sophia and Hunter, and on the negative, Jeffrey and Holly. What a well-articulated debate. I found that the level of communication and use of persuasion and use of vocabulary and emphasis was extremely strong for all four contenders. And there are many issues that probably don't get looked at. And that's probably why it's a 2-1 decision instead of being unanimous. But I'll go with what I voted on. I thought that the negative, I'll start with the negative and the affirmative first. I thought the negative defended the continuation of a system based on merit, which currently works well, is generous compared to other states, and as designed keeps the cost relatively low for the majority of Floridians. So it is a budgetary miracle funded by the lottery that works well for many students. I think that the affirmative, however, offered what to me was a more persuasive case in terms of what the hopes of education are supposed to be and how it impacts those, trying to reach up to improve their lives. The argument of the significant cost of education is well received. At the same time, though, the argument of hope for higher education, I don't think is quite as well addressed by the negative. The affirmative posits that Bright Futures as it exists rewards inequitably the resources of state-funded education, and that those who already have more receive more, while those at the other end have a higher proportional burden. The affirmative further states that quite emphatically that this is unethical, and the negative doesn't challenge that. Instead, they explain how well it works, and this is what we have to do. And I thought that it was, for me at least, from a strategic point of view, I think the ethical question had to be looked at. What the negative tried to do instead, in some ways, was say, well, it's unethical to raise people's aspirations for higher education that maybe aren't ready, or didn't take the proper preparation, or didn't have that light that stays on at the end of the night, or a nice quiet place to study in a home. I'm sure that's not what you meant, but that's how it came across to me. It was kind of like one of these pull yourself up by your bootstraps kind of analysis that ignored the whole idea of what the aspirations for higher education articulate for the 13.5 million people in the state of Florida. And I think that when the neg countered back that the expectations of higher ed, and especially if we change it, hurts those with lower incomes, I found that kind of problematic, and it did not answer the ethical challenge. So the negative budget analysis is reasonable. Certainly it is quite clearly stated, articulated, and well evidenced. I will point that out as well. But the aspirations of higher education do not seem to be addressed, and therefore on that basis, in a sea of many other arguments I could have looked at, I tended to affirm.
Thank you, Marna. Ben, if you could please elaborate on your decision.
Of course, thank you. So I was the vote for the negation this evening. And as Marna said, there was a lot of different arguments going on here. And I think one of the main clashes was, as he said, was that the ask case was very much focused on that idea of hope, of aspiration, of why it should be done, whereas the negs was focused on the how it could be done and whether it's not was feasible. And while I think that the AF did a fantastic job of rebutting the NEG's first point on the idea of the spirit of the program, and also their third point on the idea of generosity, it was that second point of how the current system works that for me really stuck out for the NEG. Because the AF doesn't necessarily provide any means of how this expansion would be funded, whereas the NEG is very clear that the current system doesn't allow for it. But more importantly, I think what point on the part of the NEG really stuck out to me is that the system proposed by the affirmation doesn't solve for the root problems. It's more of a Band-Aid, passing on the bill. And I think that there are perhaps, while not necessarily raised, there could be other solutions that would be more effective in solving for the problems on the part of the AF than simply trying to, pass on the bill of student tuition to the larger public. And that reason, most simply, is why I voted for the negation today.
Thank you, Ben. Nina, if you would please round us out.
Hello, yes, good evening. Great job to both sides, of course. I'm going to be reiterating what the other judges said. It is an honor to hear you all speak. You all sound so intelligent. You know exactly, what you're talking about. I feel like lots of people kind of feel strongly on this debate, but you got both sides have great points, very valid points, very well supported points. But with that, I did vote for the AF, kind of for similar reasons as Marna. I think some points that kind of stuck out to me were honestly, like it came down to the ethics. I feel like Hunter painted it in a way, the way I received it was that there's kind of two pools where there's the smart poor kids and the smart rich kids, and Bright Futures really just helps the smart rich kids. And if that's the case, how is that a merit-based scholarship? I don't know if that's how Hunter was trying to portray it. That's how I picked it up. So that kind of swayed me to the AF side, because if it's not helping poor or lower income people, then or that could just kind of that idea that there's the smart poor kids, the smart rich kids, and it's only helping really the smart rich kids. And that didn't really that would call for reform in my brain. Also on the economic, more practical side of it, the unsustainability question, that kind of was not at a point that was addressed enough for me by the negation. And I kind of wish it was, because even like Ben said, one side was more practical, one side was more aspirational. I feel like that unsustainability point could have been negated, and it wasn't. So that kind of stuck out to me as well. And the higher proportionality burden as well, that just the nation really challenged the ethics side either. Although I do appreciate the practicality argument, I feel like the ethical argument should have been addressed more. But other than that, again, both sides did an amazing job, amazing articulation, and it was great to hear you guys speak.
Thank you, Nina. That wraps up everything that we have for today. You all can see in the chat that Ben just posted the link to our website. There's a lot more information on there. We have the link to the Facebook posted there in the chat. And if there's another way to get updates on the speech and debate team, it's through our Instagram, which is simply just at UF Speech and Debate. Very easy to remember. Yes, the recording will be posted after this. Hopefully, I think everything went well with the recording. Zoom is tricky sometimes, but it has been recorded. Will be posted. So those are places that you could find it. That is everything I have. Thank you all so much for joining us here tonight. I hope you enjoyed. And go Gators, as Marna is showing. Thank you all.